Right, so let's get this show on the road. Right, where we at, people? Is this gone live? Just check. Right. So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Kaleem, alright. How you keeping? Mu'adh. Right, first of all, let's do a volume check. Whoa, almost dropped the Holy Grail. Allah. That's the thing, people, that's the thing. It's all about the drink. Alright, so Al-Amin, alaykum as-salam. Can you all hear me okay? Right, so can you look at that? Humayy, is that you on the right? You can Anis ji, Allah, Allah, Allah. Pranam, Prabhu, Pranam. Right, so this one, Anis, this one's going out to you, huh? Ghazab ki pyas thi. Ghazab ki pyas thi aur pani mein zahar tha. पीते तो मर जाते, ना पीते तो भी मर जाते. That's for you, Anis, that's for you. Right, so if you can hear me okay, let's get this started. Alright. Junior, she's looking good. Shukran. Right, so people, Adam, Allah, look at the love. Ciao, come va? Muy bien. Shukran, y tú, what's going down? ¿Qué tal? Right, so, so I take it you can all hear me by the reactions. So, let's begin, people, let's begin. Inna alhamdulillahi wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد. So once again, سلام الله عليكم ورحمته تعالى وبركاته. So, still feeling dazed for some reason. Alright, so I've already got quite a few questions. Feel free to fire away with your questions. I am right, I am getting them sent to me, so rest assured. So you don't need to necessarily be repeating yourselves. I repeat, you do not need to be repeating yourselves. So right, so let's see. Got some very, by the way, we got some questions already. Really, just some mind-crushing kind of questions. Expound on. All right, let's take a look at some of these people. What the hell? Let's get into this, huh? Let's get into this. So, right. Sorry, wrong message. I was about to read out something wrong there. Wrong message. Won't have played out the way I would have wanted it to. That. So it would have been one of those. Remember those old adverts? Time for a sharp exit. Right. So anyway, focus. I need to focus. Tonight I will check. Right. Okay. For the first time, Idris Al-Boob Karawi saying, tonight I will check out your live feed for the first time. I check out my material, any material you've been in, so no pressure. Ooh, Idris, is that you laying in the pressure? In the Maliki Madhab, Salim Chowdhury says, Dear Mufti Abu Layth, in what ways is the Maliki Madhab fundamentally different from other Madhabs? Why is it more suitable for Muslims of the West? What a question! Look at that. Salam from Singapore. Wa alaikum assalam. All the way back to Singapore. Right, so, right, that's a very interesting question, because the school of Medina, aka the Maliki Madhab, is what makes it unique. I will say that if you can, I've got a lecture on YouTube. It's an audio lecture called The Way of Medina in the 21st Century. Now, it's a bit lengthy because I split it into 3 sections. That what was the personality of Imam Malik, who was he, what was he about. Second section is what is the Maliki Madhab about, and the third section is what's so important about the Maliki Madhab or the school of Medina in the 21st century for the West. So that's in almost like 2 hours. So I'm not going to reiterate that right now. But what I would say is that, you see, it's not that I'm dissing any of the madhab. I'm not dissing them. Wallahi, qasmeh, I'm not. But the thing is, each madhab has a personality and it suits. Oh, Sheikh Ramzi, Barakallahu feek wa hayyak wa afak. All of you people, once again, Sheikh Ramzi is online, so mega shout out of salam going to the Sheikh, who's doing some great unprecedented work on an international scale. Right, so the thing is, all madhabs are fine. Madhabs, as I explained, I gave a good example. I call it a good example because I gave it of, you see, what is the importance of needing to learn a madhab? I give this example in my talk I just gave at York. So if you haven't watched my talk, it's on Facebook, do watch it, because I go into much detail in explaining why I don't believe it's fard or sin not to follow a madhab or anything like this, but why would you have to learn from a madhab as opposed to learning flat out comparatively? And I discussed that. So I don't believe that it's an obligation, but I believe it's the only commonsensical way to approach an in-depth understanding of the Sharia. But anyway, what makes the madhabs different is their outlooks. And the school of Medina, basically, before Imam Shafi'i arrives on the scene, each madhab was basically a region that had collected the understanding of Islam from the main companions that lived there. And they had a particular outlook. There is some level of generalization, but it's like almost saying what makes a people Egyptian, what makes a people, that's very broadly speaking, Pakistani or Indian or Moroccan or Saudi or whatever it is. You see, people will generalize a certain type of, that these all people tend to carry in general certain values or certain outlooks. So it's a bit the same way that this region, like Medina had a particular outlook, Kufa had a particular outlook. And what makes it so they're all fine, but they're just different in the way they think. What makes some schools more suitable for certain regions and time is how they view things. So the school of Medina is firmly rooted, one, in evidence and sunnah, and the whole concept of Medina. The other thing is it's firmly rooted in this concept of maslahah, of welfare, and that the deen is all about reflecting the welfare of the people of their time. So they're really big on things like this, and on convention and culture and stuff like this. So, and the fact that they had 800 years of, or at least 700 years of presence on Western European soil. Okay, so Western European soil, not just European soil like the Balkans or the Far East, but Western European soil. So I think that is, it definitely gives it its kind of, and it's not as rigid, unlike what, I know some people do present it as very rigid, but in essence it's not. It's very flexible. So that's why I feel that it's it's very suitable for people in the West. That's not to diss other madhabs, it's just that other madhabs come to a kind of, they get gridlocked. Because the deen ought to be something that complements your lifestyle and not impede it. So if your madhab or your way of life is something that Islam is just a struggle for you, every day you only struggle against Islam, then I think there's a problem, okay? Because Islam ought to complement your lifestyle, not kind of be the struggle in itself. I understand environmental factors being the struggle, but Islam being the struggle, and that too on tiny things, is, in my understanding, an issue. So this is why I do feel it is more suitable for places like the West. Okay, anyway, let's move on. Actually, let me drop in a point here. I was, a few weeks back, I got to spend some time with Sheikh Akram Nadwi, and he's an amazing individual, senior individual of the UK. But he said many awesome things, but he said something incredibly awesome which really I loved, and that was, he said that, you see, people today ask about hadith, they ask about this, that. What they don't understand is people have their own understanding of certain words, and they read into these words. So let me give you an example. This example he never gave, but let me give you this example just for it to make sense. It's like saying, imagine, so imagine the word zakat. The word zakat means a purification, something cleansing, purifying. Now then it's got an Islamic understanding to it, which means paying a certain amount of money on certain things. Today, the understanding of zakat is the second, primarily. Like if you said zakat to Muslims, they would only understand the legal concept of zakat when you say zakat. They wouldn't understand the linguistic meaning. I mean, they may understand it but that's not what comes to their mind. So, in the Quran, at some point, obviously Allah does use the word zakat as well, like this, and sadaqat to refer to zakat. But the word zakat can be used just to mean the linguistic meaning. About, oh, this was, you know, aqrabu zakatan, and it's more close to for purification and so on and so forth. Now, you reading that as a Muslim would first think zakat. Oh, okay, no, and then you'll divert back, because the context here clearly can't be talking about money. Then you'll divert to maybe the original. But the first understanding you'll take is the one you've culturally been indoctrinated with, or indoctrinated ain't the right word, but you've been brought up with. Okay. So you've been brought up with, okay? Now, the thing is, so like this, what Sheikh Akram said was that, you see, hadith and sunnah, they were like blocks, like bricks if you like, within a greater framework. That framework, or that narrative, was Medina, the Prophet's city. These rulings all made sense within that environment, because the Prophet had created this awesome understanding and ambience in which these rulings made sense. After the Prophet's lifetime, Islam began to spread so rapidly that Muslims, obviously they hoped for, but they didn't anticipate that it was unprecedented how fast Islam spread after the lifetime of the Prophet. So huge spaces of the globe came into Islam very rapid, like in the time of Umar radiallahu anh, massively huge regions had already been annexed to the Muslim world, what we could now start calling the Muslim kind of civilization. So Sahaba had to go to these different places because of the pace at which Islam spread and enveloped these new lands. What Muslims could do was export the hadith. They could export the hadith. What they couldn't do was export Medina. See, that's what they couldn't do. So what was happening was the people that were inheriting the hadith were resorting to their own cultural understanding to understand them. So when there's verses to do with how do you treat people, how do you treat women, for example, how do you treat different people, how do you treat your elders, your youngsters, the cultures already had an understanding. The hadith comes and they are now reading into it with their cultural understanding. Because they could export the hadith, what they couldn't export was Medina. And this is what Shaykh Akram was saying as well, that this is why Imam Malik was so big about the practice and the environment of Medina. That ties into our earlier question, why the way of Medina is an awesome way to resort to. Okay people, so now let's move on with the next question. Right, my mate Saima Khan says, my mate got married, then got into an argument. Right, dear Deirdre, you've all read that. You've all read that. If men wrote columns, you know that where the person where she says she writes in and this lady and says. You know, I left my husband and I was getting ready to go for work and my sister was coming round and she was going to babysit whatever and she says as I drove up and the car stalled and it stopped, but I was only like 100 yards away from my house, so I tried, it wouldn't start, so I thought, I know, I'll just pop back home and just maybe take my husband's car. So she says, as I popped in, I realised he was having an affair with, I caught him right there with my sister or whatever, and she says, oh my God, you know, and I'm so, and she says, and basically, please help. So the guy says, well, he says, in such circumstances, we'd advise that you remove the key from the ignition, let it cool down, then try again. Usually it's just the engine that just freezes over. Try that on at least 3 times. Usually it should do the trick. If men wrote columns, the world would just be such a different place, isn't it? We just see things so differently. And so anyway, right, so now my mate got married, then got in. Speaking about humor, people, right, got I was hearing this person is he's a comedian, so I got to share this with you. This is not for the faint-hearted, okay? This is not for the faint-hearted. So I'm telling you beforehand. Anyway, so the person says, he says, you know, I'd be terrible working in these hospices or as a doctor who's got to tell somebody that they've only got a short time left to live. And doctors, they do this just so, oh, you've only got 3 days, you've only got 1 week, right? So he goes, if I had to do it, how would I do it? He says, well, I would say, well, don't order any box sets, mate. Definitely not 24. Oh, alright, I'm sorry. The thing is, my humor, it's so dark. I don't understand how, put it like this, I'm glad I've got a circle of friends who are just as crazy. Otherwise, I think I definitely would go crazy with my sense of humor. Right, anyway, so, let's see. So he said to his missus, talaq, 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 now wants to get back with her. He's asked many people, more or less everyone has said something different. One imam said that his wife to marry again and divorce that guy and only remarry a previous husband. Others said all sorts of view. What is it? You see, the thing is, Saima Khan, the thing is, look, in these situations, I do believe, I have answered this previously, that if the talaq is given in one context, I do generally go with the majority view. There is a majority view, minority view. Majority view is that 3 do count as 3, and or the other view, minority view, being that anything within one context counts as 1. So generally I do go with the majority view. However, as many dons of the school of Medina, like Ibn Ashur of the last century, has taught us, and other people, that look, in situations like this, where there is maslahah and welfare and a strong resolve to get back together, then based on the maslahah, we do rule with the minority position, saying that, look, that's fine, they can get back together, but they should take these things seriously and not as a joke. Okay? It's the reason why Allah set that, and I totally disagree with this other ruling of what they call the halala, the tahleel, the tahleel. Where they got to marry the wife off or the ex-wife for a short period of time, and then come back and collect her. That awkward drive home. So, how was your evening? A totally inappropriate response then would be, well, I'm just very tired and exhausted. That would be a very inappropriate response at that stage. So the thing is, I'm totally against those kind of things. And the Prophet ﷺ cursed that. And he did say that that was haram. So these halala things, and I'm shocked to see that masjids openly still teach this. When I say teach, they don't teach it as teacher from the pulpit, but when women phone in, they actually tell them, don't worry, we can sort it out for you. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm all for opportunity, but that's just it's not the way to do it, okay? There's ways, and then there's ways, okay? So this is not the way to do things like this. So, because it really just brings Islam into disrepute, clearly. So, you have to understand why what the Quran was speaking about. You see, in the time, the Arabs, in the Prophet ﷺ's time, they had a certain people were abusing talaq. So they would divorce the wife. So let's say the wife's divorced now. Now she's going through so she's going through her iddah. Now before the iddah would finish, which is the waiting period, they would revoke the divorce, cancel it, bring her back. And then when she's back, then they would divorce her again. And then she would wait out the iddah. And once she's towards the end of her iddah, they would bring her back. And they would do this for like 2 years, 1.5 years, 3 years. They would do this as an act of revenge to inflict suffering onto her. So Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تَذَرُوهَا كَالْمُعَلَّقَةِ, that do not leave her in this suspended state where you neither embrace her as a wife, neither let her go. You just keep her in this suspended state, this limbo state of suffering. So what the Quran came to end that, to say, well, okay, now you can only do it 3 times. And should you reconcile after the 3rd time, then tough. She has to go marry someone else. Like, she can't, only if a future relationship of hers breaks down, then. Because it was trying to prevent, you see, what happens is, obviously, like, the guy is gonna, like, to make her suffer, he could easily manipulate her into saying, look, okay, I tell you what, give it one more go, and then we'll see if it could work out. Now, so if Allah allowed it straight away, it would have meant that, okay, well, he's just going to keep doing this. So this was the purpose of that ruling. What's happened is it did prevent that, but then from this, people opened another Pandora's box. Okay. Right. Okay, so let's take some other questions now, people. Right. What is your view on Karbala, okay, I'm not getting into that, right? I'm not getting drawn into this whole Shia thing again, right? The thing is, who are the Ahlul Bayt? Right, the Ahlul Bayt, there's a huge difference of opinion on them. Many of the companions did consider them to be the wives of the Prophet and other people. There's a huge dispute on who the Ahlul Bayt are. The word Al, when we say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Ali Muhammad, the word Al, according to Imam Malik, is the followers of the Prophet, as Allah says in the Quran, wa alu Fir'aun, and the followers of Fir'aun, not his immediate family, but the followers. So in the same way, Imam Malik said the Al of Muhammad are his followers. We're not talking about Ahlul Bayt here, we're talking about the Al. Okay? And other Imams said no, the Al are the Ahlul Bayt. Then the Ahlul Bayt they disagree on, because in the Quran when Allah uses the term إنما يريد الله ليطهركم أهل البيت, there he's talking about the wives of the Prophet. So some of the Sahaba considered the wives as Ahlul Bayt, others didn't, and they considered whatever. But I mean, my view as far as the Al is concerned, I go with what Imam Malik said, that the Al are the followers of the Prophet. I don't believe that the Prophet's family, I think from a virtue perspective, you could love them and honor them and have that extra love and attention for them as from an honorary perspective, but in real time Islamic value they are just like everybody else. There is no elitism in Islam, as Allah says in the Quran, وَإِذَا نُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, and then when the day of judgment comes, فَلَا أَنْسَابَ بَيْنَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ, there will be no lineages between them on that day. You all stand equal. We are all the children of Adam. No Arab is better than a non-Arab. No white person is better than a black person, or vice versa. We stand equal. Okay, if you claim to be from the tribe of Hashim, you claim to be from Ali or from the Alawites, or you claim to be Fatimi from Fatima, alhamdulillah, that's great, but it doesn't mean anything from an Islamic perspective. You are simply a Muslim. I am a Muslim, other people are Muslim. Inna aqrabakum indallahi, the closest of us to Allah is that who is more conscious of Allah. Okay, we are not closer to Allah through our lineages. Okay, you could be the Prophet's uncle like Abu Lahab was, and it doesn't benefit you. Okay, so I don't buy into this elitism. I don't buy into this because he's a Sayyid, I must bow down and kiss the floor upon which he walks. You see, I believe we are all the children of Adam, right? As the Prophet said, that, you know, he said in a hadith, kullukum min Adam wa Adam min turab, that all of you are from Adam and Adam was from dust. So that is my belief in these things. I don't buy into this. I know Pakistanis and Arabs as well to some extent, and Muslims in general as well, but I'm just saying I've seen it a lot with the Asian, Indo-Pak Asians, that we are huge into this kind of like semi-Sayyid, kind of like, you know, we like hero worship of anybody who is a Sayyid. And by Sayyid they mean from Hussein, and by Sharif they mean through Hassan. And people, look, you can do that. I don't feel that it has any Islamic value, but as a person you can love and respect somebody. But I've seen this, it creates tribalism, it creates just huge false hero worship, and it gives people so much power as these kind of saints, that they, you know, they can do anything. Like I remember being when I was in Pakistan in one of the madrasas I was in, this was when I was in Islamabad, that they had this understanding that, oh, when people got into trouble, if you were a Sayyid, they would just let you go. I mean, what's that all about? You know, and they said, I remember one of the teachers saying, well, how would I answer the Prophet on the Day of Judgment? Yeah, alright, mate. What, you think the other people ain't God's creatures? How are you going to answer God about the other people that you're going to beat the hell out of? So, I mean, well, you think they don't feel pain? I mean, what the hell's wrong with you? So, you know, this kind of irrational compassion. Anyway, so I'm not, as I say, one ummah, one love for everybody, not just for elites or tribes or Bani Hashim. You see, we're not Bani Hashim, we're not Bani anything. We are Bani Adam, children of Adam. If you want to make something, make it off your own back. لا ضر ضر امرئ يطري أوائله ويطرق رأسه إن سألته ما هو. That there's no good about somebody just going on about trying to get his nasab to carry him. Carry yourself on your own actions. If you want to talk, bring what you've got to the table. Don't tell me who your forefathers were. That doesn't mean anything to me. Anyway, so right, next question. Here's a question: can we affirm that our religion is superior to others? We, all three monotheistic religions, have the same experiences in faith, have great thinkers who are amazing people. We can't all have paths to salvation, right? That's a very interesting question. I mean, look, I don't know about salvation, because salvation is to do with Allah, it's to do with the akhirah. The Prophet said nobody gets into paradise through their actions, it's only through the grace of Allah. How does the grace of Allah work? Well, it works according to Him. These religions do seem to follow on from each other. How do we know Islam to be, in our version, understand superior? It's as Imam Ghazali and other people say, it's only through the intellect and reason we know this. Because you have to reason it out. Otherwise, experiences, everybody's having awesome experiences. You can't claim that, right, okay, I got somebody just telling me, ittaqillah ya. Alright, I just blocked somebody live. The power of blocking is so awesome, right? And so the point is, anyway, now, the thing being that, you see, it's only through reason that we can understand how powerful Islam is. And this is why it irritates me when people say, you shouldn't reason in the deen and you shouldn't ask certain questions. Because then what's so different about, how do you know that Islam is actually superior? I heard somebody say the other day on Facebook, I was reading this thing, and they said all these people going into reason and going into this, is it not enough to say we believe because Allah told us to believe? Of course it's not. What the hell are you on about? What, so if I ask you, why do you believe? First of all, stop lying. You don't believe because Allah told you to believe. You believe because you were born in a Muslim family and you were brought up a Muslim, right? So first of all, be honest with yourself. Right, most Muslims today are only Muslim, or whatever people of whatever religion are only that religion because they were born into that family. Right, they're not that religion because they chose it. So stop lying to start off with, be honest and transparent. Secondly, once you say, I believe because Allah told me, well, how do you know He's telling the truth? How do you know somebody never wrote that book? How do you know that that's even real? How do you know that that isn't the devil? Well, exactly, you have to reason it. You have to think about it. You have to think, well, it doesn't make it, there must be a creator, there must be this. And if He's, let me look at these other religions, this doesn't make sense, Trinity doesn't make sense. And then you understand, well, this makes sense to me. It's only through reason that you arrive at faith. Otherwise, what is so different about you and the pagan Arabs that Allah is condemning in the Quran, who say, هَذَا مَا أَلْفَيْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا? This is what our forefathers were upon. Why are all of them wrong? Why is Allah condemning them? But what were they saying so different? They obviously, look, people say, yeah, but polytheism is dumb. Is polytheism really so dumb? From if you want to argue it, is it so dumb? Does it not actually answer several problems which other people struggle to answer? They actually has very powerful, compelling reasons to it. At face value, people think polytheism is dumb. At a pragmatic value, it's actually not dumb. I mean, I'm not, don't misquote me, I'm not trying to support polytheism, but I'm trying to show you why those people believed in it. Right? So polytheism for many people answers a lot of questions. So you see, it's okay. People struggle with their daily lives, with the problem of evil, with the problem of suffering. They can't seem to reconcile this. Now, they can reconcile that a God created this world. That much they can understand. But then they can't understand why they're suffering, or why people are suffering. So what could make sense to them is, well, okay, maybe the creating ultimate God, the ultimate God, created it, but he's not too bothered, because ultimately whether you suffer or don't suffer, or you succeed or don't succeed, everything to him is just the same, because really you don't carry no meaning for him. You're just a little creation of his. But then he created, there are other gods, so these other gods manage certain things. So there's a God of war, there's a God of prosperity, there's a God of fortune, there's a God of progeny, of children, there's a God of fertility, there's a God of love, there's a God of this. So now these gods are not all powerful, but these gods can focus on these specific things. So you can make offerings to these gods to intervene, and if they don't intervene, it still makes sense because they're not all powerful. But you try to plead with them like you would with a human being, because they're not totally they're not absolutely completely powerful gods. And you can compete by just pleading to one God about one thing. So this is how Hinduism works. This is how the ancient Arabs worked. The ancient Arabs knew what Allah was. They had the word Allah for God. They never used to call their statues Allah. They used to call them Lat wa Manat wa Uzza wa Yahuz wa this and that, and they never used to call the statues Allah. It's like in Hinduism, Atma or Brahma is the main Atma that made the entire universe. He's not the little gods, but he's so detached. There's no point crying out to him. Because to him, you succeeding or becoming rich makes no difference to him. So they need to kind of figure out, they need to get help from somebody that's more relatable to them. So this is why polytheism worked and still works in certain parts of the world. And to be honest with you, Christianity, what did it do? Not the Trinity. Trinity was also partially an attempt, but with the patron saints. What did it do? We make offerings to this patron saint. Why? Because this saint will protect us. Because the all-powerful God is too distant. Maybe he's not interested. And to some extent, what Muslims do, many Muslims do, I make an offering to this saint. Why? Because this saint will give me children. Why won't God give me children? Because God does give children, but God's out there somewhere. You see, because many Muslims too, deep down, struggle with this concept of a personal God. Because it doesn't make sense for them. Because they think, God's so big, but I need somebody closer. So when you ask people, why do you make offerings to this saint? They will give you human examples. Like they will say, oh, but look, imagine I wanted you to do something for me. Would it be easier if I came to you, if I brought somebody you love to you? You see, because what they are understanding is that God is closer, as in he is more distant from certain people. He's not that bothered about certain people. You see, it's the same concept, that he is distant. So we need these intermediaries who can do certain functions. Because the concept of a personal God is what people struggle with. Because if they don't struggle with just the concept of a personal God, but when they try to reconcile that with the suffering and failures that they have in life. So this is why Christianity had this whole thing of yes, it got rid of polytheism, but then it just made this miniature version with all the patron saints. And Muslims did the same kind of thing as well. They just did the same version with their saints. And so polytheism does make sense to people. I know at a logical level it doesn't. But who on earth is logical and reasonable? I guarantee you, me for even saying this, I'll get people condemning me. Like, so the point is, look, yes, by reason alone, you can determine the truth claims. You will experience God, but through reason alone can you determine truth claims. Right, okay, next question, people. On your Hifdh video, the hadith you mentioned, is it Sahih? Have you acted upon it, and did it improve your memorization? From Isa Khan. And Khalil Qamar just saying, alright, to you. Right, so the thing is, look, Isa Khan, I believe that, Isa Khan, almost like Isa Khelvi. Alright, the Ataullah fans. Right, those of you who know Ataullah, those who know. Right, so anyway, the hadith that I've shared in my Hifdh video on YouTube, I believe it's Hasan, it's acceptable. There's some problems in some of the chains, but there's a few of them, and they are kind of like, they strengthen each other, and it's acceptable. I did myself practice it. It does say that you have to read it every Thursday night, and you got to read the whole 4 rak'at with these lengthy surahs in there: Surah Yasin, Surah Mulk, Surah Yasin, Surah Dukhan, in the order: Surah Yasin, Alif Lam Mim Sajda, Surah Dukhan, and Surah Mulk. Now, in each rak'ah, and then you've got to make this dua, and do that for either 3, 5, or 7 consecutive weeks. It is a ritual. It is kind of irrational, and rituals by their nature are not about reason. They are rituals. I did practice it myself. People may say, well, did it really? It did actually work. I know it's going to sound, it did work. People could say maybe that was my inability. Okay, maybe it was, but it did actually work on me. I remember, I say this only as an encouragement for people, and may Allah, as Allah says in the Quran, وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ, that you should tell people about good things that have happened to you in the hope that it inspires other people to do the same. When I memorized the page of the Quran, one page is what I had set myself as a task. So I initially began with half a page, and then by the time I moved into the madrasa, I was doing 1 page a day, like a simple page of the Quran, the standard kind of Saudi, the general version of the Quran, the Mus'haf we have. And I used to struggle. Our time to read to the teacher was after Subah and before breakfast. So we would start at between 5:30 to 7:30 in the morning was when we'd wake up, and we would have to read the new, what we would call sabaq, but the thing, whether you want to call it wadhifa or whatever it is, but your daily portion, you'd have to read. Now, I used to only get in front of the teacher by about 7 o'clock. I'll be going over it, and honestly, I used to make so many mistakes. I almost was becoming disheartened. And I was like one of the eldest, because I began Hifdh at a late age. I was 20 years old when I began. And the teacher actually kind of felt that maybe I was getting disheartened. And he kind of once called me as well and said to me, he read this poem in Farsi, and he said to me, he translated it, which basically meant that there is nothing difficult except by doing it, it becomes easy. So really nothing, like ease is just the result of consistent practice. That's what it is. Like he said to me, look, don't kind of give up, hang in there, like kind of stay strong. And I did. I remember coming across that dua. I did read that, and I did it for 7 consecutive. And I made this rule with myself, you see. I made this rule that I will only double or nothing. Like if I'm going to increase in Hifdh, like if I want to increase my portion, I must double or nothing. Or I stay, like I cannot move on. So if I want to go from 1 page, I can't just go to like 1 page and 3 lines. I mean, this was my own rule, which I you know, ek baar mein commitment kar. It was my own little kind of thing. So I started, and alhamdulillah, I mean, I felt a great kind of cognitive opening. I doubled, then doubled, then doubled. There came a point where, at that point, I was doing almost half a juz every day. I would just memorize, I would sit there, and I would be one of the first people, as soon as the teacher would come, to go and read to him. And I would just go sit back, and that's it, I've done. And now it's just going over, and, you know, and that's, you know, min Allah, you know, it's Allah's grace. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. And Allah gives His grace to whom He wills. I'm just saying that as an encouragement that these things are possible. My hifdh isn't perfect, I need to go over it, but my point is I did it because I want to understand. You see, when I began to study, somebody once said to me, he never said it to me, he said it in front of me, but it just hit me. I don't even think he was trying to hit me with it, he was just saying it. He said, you know, the thing is, somebody who hasn't, he said that you could, you know, these scholars, he goes, yeah, they're all good, but if you want to become a scholar and you haven't even really memorized the Quran, he said, I suppose you could, but really what kind of scholar hasn't even really memorized, committed the Quran to memory? And I just thought, oh my God, like that, it just hit me so much. He wasn't even trying to aim it at me. I was just in my first year of seeking knowledge out there, and I just thought to myself, you know what, I want to memorize the Quran. And I struggled immensely in my first, like I said, first few weeks, and maybe, you know, but when I did commit to it full time, that's, then alhamdulillah, it opened up. So if people do want to memorize it, do memorize it, inshallah. I think what helped me a lot was that I already knew Arabic. I'd learnt Arabic at the time. So I did my memorization with meaning. So what I would do is my daily portion, I had permission to kind of go away, be secluded, like for a portion of, like, so for, let's say, 1.5 hour, 2 hours every day, I could go into a separate room. I used to go over, first of all, what I do is check any words that I don't understand, or check their meaning in the in Raghib al-Asfahani's book of the Mufradat al-Quran. Then I would check up their meaning in another thing. Then I would read the English translation of the Quran. I would read the English commentary of that, what I'm going to memorize. Then I would go and read, they had given me access to the teacher's library, so I would read up a few different tafsirs for that day's session. So I would read up like Tafsir ibn Kathir, Tafsir al-Madhari they had Ruh al-Ma'ani by Alusi, they had one other one as well. So I would read these, and on a slow level, that's very possible. Obviously if you're doing it for the whole, but if you're doing it only so many pages every day, it's possible. And then I would memorize, and I give further tips in my video. So I did make that a few years ago, so, but feel free, inshallah. It did, alhamdulillah, I mean, once I did commit full time to it, I think I did it within probably about 10 months, the whole Quran. So alhamdulillah, it was very, and it does open up your cognitive. Definitely, if you can do it, people, do it. Right, the thing is, right, so question, what are your views regarding apostasy and its punishment within Islam? You interpret it as treason within Islam. However, I've recently come across a lot of scholars who say that. See, the thing is, apostasy, it's, people, you need to just pause and just take a step back and think about what you're asking. Not this person, but this topic. Religions cannot work by blackmail. Okay. Allah is saying in the Quran, La ikraha fid din. There is no compulsion regarding the deen. Allah is saying that. I'm not saying it, Allah is saying it. It makes no sense to have an apostasy ruling. Because that's like saying, oh, what if the pagans had an apostasy ruling? So that's just dumb. Like, how were they supposed to embrace Islam? Well, because if they became apostates, they were supposed to get killed then. See, this is nothing but major insecurities Muslims have, certain Muslims, and they feel that, if you leave Islam, you're going to get killed. See, that's delusions of grandeur. Islam does not need you. Okay, Islam, yamunnuna alayka. Allah says in the Quran, yamunnuna alayka an aslamu. That, ihsan karte hain tum pe. That they think it's such a, this is our favor to you that we have embraced Islam. That, who the hell are you? Balillahu yamunnu alayk an hadakum lil Islami. Allah granted His favor on you by guiding you to Islam. Who the hell are you? Trying to, look, if somebody wants Islam, it's there. If they don't want it, don't have it. It's not, Islam has stood the test of time, it's fine. It does not need you or me, or it doesn't need, even if 100 million people, even if 1 billion people left Islam, right, Islam would still flourish. The point is, look, you don't need these kind of intimidation tactics, because what it does is it makes Islam look really weak, insecure, and it makes it look like a very barbaric kind of enforced blackmailing religion. Because that is in essence what you're saying, like, oh, so if you by your reason can find a fault with Islam and decide it's not true, then we must kill you. Sounds perfectly reasonable to me. What retarded logic is that? Nothing but, and this is what to add more layers of retardation, this is what they say. Oh no, but it's really fair, really. We don't say just kill them, we say with due process. Okay, what the hell is due process? Well, we're going to take you to a sheikh who's going to convince you Islam is the haqq. And obviously, upon being given clear, manifest proofs, if you still deny, then you must just be the devil, and therefore we must kill you. Well, okay. So these manifest proofs, why doesn't that guy just share them with the rest of the world and make everybody Muslim? Since they're so manifest. Honestly, how do you deal with this kind of nonsense and pathetic, dumb logic? How do you deal with people like that? And they say they want to rule the world. If they were ruling the world, well, the first person to leave Islam, well, I think I'd be amongst that crew. Because who the hell would want to be part of these people? That, if you think, if you reason, you're allowed to, that's like saying, look, you're allowed to use your reason as long as the result agrees with what I'm saying. Well, that's not the point of reason. I'm sorry to kind of disappoint, but the point of reason, you see, this is why I say that Muslims have today left the Quran. The Quran it's not even background music. The Quran doesn't matter anymore to Muslims. Read the Quran. The Quran doesn't have that tone. The Quran is all about convincing people. It's all about trying to invite people to Islam. If it was about force, because this is just a forced narrative, this is just like tricking people into Islam. Once they're in, we've locked the gate. When you tell me, so they say, there's no force to embrace Islam, but once you've embraced it, you're stuck. But that's dumb. Anything you get into willfully, you should be able to get out of willfully. What kind of a dumb logic is that? And by the way, where does it apply to born Muslims? Which, may I remind you, are actually the outright outstanding 98% of all, forget 98, I'd probably think 99.9% of all Muslims on the globe are born Muslims. They're not actually converted Muslims. So at what point did they embrace Islam? And what age do they get to decide? And why can't they decide a bit later on? So it's just dumb, you see. So the thing is, it's just insecurity. Honestly, insecurity. People are so insecure. Do you know what they do? They do a disservice to Allah and His Messenger. That's what they do. Nothing but a disservice to Allah and His Messenger. The Prophet ﷺ is not with us, but if he was, I could hand on my heart say that he would be disappointed with these people. Seriously, disappointed. Their message is not the message of the Prophet. It was not difficult for the Prophet to enforce Islam on the people around him. It was not difficult. I tell you that, it was not difficult. So the thing is, anyway, should the my question is, what is the ruling? Right, okay. Saira Mahmood saying, by the way, it's the first time I'm tuning in. Uh-oh. Sorry to disappoint. The thing is, well, people, what can I do, huh? What can I do? This is why I'm grateful to Zuckerberg for having Facebook. Because I don't think any masjid would ever host me. I don't think any Islamic platform would ever host me. So thank God for Zuckerberg on Facebook. So right, the thing is, what is the ruling around women traveling without mahram? Also the ruling around women living on their own, especially. Right, well, Saira, the thing is, women can travel on their own. There's nothing wrong with that. The ruling in the past, as Abul Walid al-Baji, one of the dons of the Maliki Madhab of Muslim Spain, almost 1,000 years ago, he writes in his commentary on the Muwatta, which is called the Muntaqa, which is actually that book right there. Can you see that? That, people, that right there. Oh, sorry. The thing is, so he writes in his Muntaqa that this was to do with safety. As other people have alluded to as well, this was to do with women's safety, that the Prophet ﷺ was trying to safeguard them. That people in the past, obviously even in certain parts of the world today, even for men going out very dangerous on their own is very dangerous. Women would obviously in that time, and in certain parts of the world today even, they would be kidnapped, gang raped, eventually either murdered or maybe just kept as sex slaves and then murdered eventually. So the thing is, it was obviously a very dangerous parts of the world that time, dangerous world, and even today some parts are, but many parts are not like that today. So provided it was a safety thing. Okay, the Prophet did not say this 48 miles, by the way. The Prophet said, in different hadith, there's different wording. So in one he said the journey of 1 day and 1 night. In some he said 2 days and 2 nights. In some he said 3 days and 3 nights. In some he said ثلاثة أيام فصاعدا, 3 days and more. Now, some people kind of measured in that day and age, 48, 50 miles was like what it would take. So for 2 whole days or 3 whole days to go on horseback, it would take them, so long because they have to keep stopping and keep taking. And remember, this is normal journeys. We're not talking, they did have like postmen and people who had rapid horses and their jobs were only to just go between. But this is when you're actually going as a regular. So it's like saying today you have sports cars that can drive up to 180 miles per hour, 200 miles per hour, but you're not going to really drive 200 miles per hour. You're going to go within the speed limit. So you have to be realistic. So it would take people probably 2-3 days to take that journey on a realistic basis. Now, that was very dangerous. So this is why people came up with that figure previously. Today it's nothing like this. Today having these kind of restrictions once again makes the religion look dumb and silly, saying a woman can go 47 miles but she can't go 48 miles. Abul Walid al-Baji back then said, look, a woman going to town is not an issue, and back then he said a woman travelling in a qafila, in a caravan, is like her being in town. So the caravans were no problem. So the point, once again, it came back to safety. So today it's absolutely fine. She can catch planes, she can go on trains, she can drive on her own. All of these things are fine. Okay. And you asked for the Hanafi ruling, freshly coming in, people. Freshly. I've got a fresh announcement for you. Right. Be prepared to be rocked. Alright. You're not going to hear this anywhere else, people. Right here on Monday nights with Mufti. Alright. So, well, apparently, right, my sources tell me directly, as they say, directly from the horse's mouth, you've got direct, fresh information coming in that Mufti Taqi Sahib of Karachi, the renowned Mufti, who's also the teacher of some of my teachers, he has given the fatwa in his class whilst teaching Sahih al-Bukhari to his students, saying that he also personally believes and gives the ruling by the Malikis, and he's referring to Baji and some Shafi'is who said that a woman can travel without a mahram if she struggles with to get a mahram. He said that's fine, and he said like the Malikis who said she can go in a caravan, he said so catching planes and driving, and this is in Pakistan, he's saying. He's telling them in Pakistan. Right, so he said that that's fine in this day and age. So people, look at that. Look at that. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. So even Mufti Taqi Sahib, who is, who he is, has given that ruling. So, okay. Should the Sharia be rewritten? I've answered this previously. Check out my York talk, and also previous Monday Nights with Mufti. I've answered that in depth. Right, first time tuning in. Alright, so why does religion glorify faith over deeds? One's deeds are nullified. It's an interesting question, Farhan, but I think it might take a while to kind of answer. Why is faith so important? Because I think the main purpose was of Islam was to connect us with the Creator. That was the main purpose of Islam. By extension, Islam was then going to say, well, and by the way, human beings, you should live in a certain way. So I think that's speaking in a relative perspective. Otherwise, it doesn't mean that having faith and being ruthless is okay. It's not. Okay, so I condemned, and there was a huge uproar, as you remember. I had I think half of the Australia's nutcases on my case, right, when there was an imam who made a video in which he was encouraging people for salah, and then he said that, look, if you miss salah or whatever, and you could be somebody who is a murderer, a paedophile, a child rapist, and you could an alcoholic, a gambler, a drug dealer, and you could be all these things on a daily basis, but somebody who prays is still better. But if you pray, you're still better than somebody who does not pray. That was the most pathetic, dumb, highly irresponsible thing I've ever heard attributed to Islam. Okay, and I got very, very I made this thing which really kind of, I know it upset a lot of people, and they said you shouldn't have really done that, but I said I'm sorry, I don't care. They said that the guys, people are great people, they're doing great work and da'wah and stuff like this. I said I genuinely do not care. Okay, you could be, Abdul Sattar Edhi doing great humanitarian work, but please do not speak on behalf of Islam with nonsense. Okay, do not do that, because you do not know how that damage, because that damage cannot be undone now, because it's been passed on and circulated. So I said that, so in that case, ISIS definitely pray. They definitely pray. Most of ISIS, okay, so most people who are like these hardcore fanatics, terrorists, they usually do pray, and they take the religion very seriously. So I said in that case, most Muslims on the globe do not pray. Most of humanity does not pray salah. So if we take 7 billion people on the globe today, a tiny fraction of them only pray 5 times every day. And people like ISIS definitely pray 5 times a day. So according to that ruling, they are definitely better, regardless of being terrorists, regardless of being people who they are, regardless of defaming Islam, they are definitely better than the rest of the entire humanity. I said, that's nonsense. And people try to say to me, oh, but Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah said, I don't give a damn who said what. Don't bring me Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. I don't care. If you are a murderer, if you are a rapist, if you are a terrorist, if you are these things, your Islam is not going to help you. Okay, don't try to say, well, I got faith, you haven't got faith. At least I believe in God, so you're all going to hell. What the hell? Who made you God? I'm sorry, did you just upgrade from Muslim to God status? So I think this kind of thing is nonsense. But look, in the Quran, where Allah is emphasizing Iman and speaking about, how Iman, and in those things about where good deeds can be erased by doing certain bad deeds or by rejecting, let's say, the Creator, it could impact your good deeds. This has a context to it where Allah is trying to address the concept of faith. So in a particular context, you might focus on one thing. It doesn't mean the other things are not important. They are important. They are very important. Okay, so just to clarify that. What is the ruling? Okay. Why do you believe in Islam? यार काफिर बना के छोड़ोगे यार. You guys are gonna really push me out of the fold. What is it? What does Ghalib say? He says, सजा में हद चाहिए उक़ूबत के वास्ते, आखिर गुनाहगार हूँ काफिर नहीं हूँ मैं. That's the thing. Like he says, at the end of the day, even I might be sinful, but even I'm not a kafir. The point is, look, I think it's a reason-based approach. I do find I am mesmerized by things like the cosmos, by things like seeing the order in things that I see. And my personal experience, as in, I do feel and I do believe that there is a creator. And I do believe that, to me, that this is more than just coincidence. That it's too, and the more and more we're discovering, it's too amazing. It's just too high tech. I just don't, and I'm not even talking, and I tell you, things like the quantum world have really mesmerized me. And this is why I say things like that verse in the Quran that Allah says about His signs, fil afaq, that this is not the horizons, but it's the cosmos. Wa fi anfusikum, and in yourselves, is not about you as at a biological level, but at the quantum level. That once these things open up on you, Allah says, يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ, then it will become manifest that indeed it was the truth. That I find these things, so this is why I believe my faith is a combination of these things. My faith is a combination of reason, built in with my personal experiences, built in with being in awe of the kind of overwhelming, awe-striking majesty of the universe. Seriously, with all its, I find it just wow. So all of these things put together, and I say this, look, people, I say this not in a, I don't know, obviously people, how we define practicing, but I don't know if obviously I'm a person of religion, but I don't know if I would define myself truly, if I was being honest to myself, as a religious person, depending on what they mean by religious. What I know is I am somebody that I was attracted to this deen. I wasn't brought up practicing, my family ain't really practicing, stuff like that, but I was attracted to this deen, and then I literally fell in love with the sciences of Islam. I was so overwhelmed with, and I still am, and I love the sciences of Islam, by sciences, the tradition, the legacy of Islam is what I fell in love with. And through that is my connection really with it. In trying to understand it, trying to absorb it, and then just convey it to other people. I don't claim to be a pious person. I don't think I am. Why claim? It would just be a blag. I'm not a pious person. But that's my thing. Okay, that's why I find, as far as spiritual experiences, whatever that means, the experiences are different for different people. To some people, Islam, its legacy, its knowledge will be that experience for them. To other people, it might be doing dhikr. But everybody would have something different. Have you considered compiling all these fatwas into a book format? Inshallah, if Allah gives me the will to stop being so lazy and get on with it. Do you think it's true that magic can hurt somebody remotely? I answered this previously. No, I do not. Magic and things like this. Magic at best is either trickery or illusions or hypnosis. Mind control is what magic is. So things like that and evil eye don't really exist. I've answered this in more depth in that York, keep calling it York, York talk. Okay, so the York University thing. So check it out, people. Right. Bro, been hanging around with Pakistan. What is the opinion? Musa bin... Right, so one question. What is the ruling about mixed married Muslims with Catholics or Jews? Is good or not? Women need to change religion or something? You see, Islam does allow, obviously, to intermarry with the people of the book. But it's... I mean, I don't know. People say, is it good? Is it not? I don't know. I don't know what to tell people, because relationships are really just very, they are as complicated as the people in them. They're all about, in essence, they're all about things like really compromise. If you could bring it down to one word, it's all about compromise. And there's going to be more compromise on one end than the other, and whoever is compromising, whoever's compromising less, I guess, holds more power in the relationship. They are... It's... The problem is that, you see... Okay, people, I don't want to break your dreams. But, you see, this is why this is why they don't ask people like scientists to comment on relationships. Right? Because they've just studied things like human nature and things like this from a very different perspective. Human beings, I've said this before, we're just creatures, but just intelligent creatures, that's all. We are still we are just animals and creatures. And then we have a whole thing of social impositions, and we create social structures, and they help, and they have utility, and they have reasons, but we weren't designed like that, you see. So although we adapt to these things, but then we will always struggle with certain things. It will be an infinite struggle. And then I think the nature of, like I say, the genders, they will always struggle with each other, in understanding each other, in never being able to understand each other. It's like I give you an example. Like, look, let's just say, like my humor, I spoke about it before as an example. Now, humor is something which is cross-cultural, yet people will not tolerate each other's humor at certain levels. People don't tolerate each other. This is the thing, you see, and it's not just about, I mean, humor is just an example, but I mean, and then when the more differences you have, the more spanners you throw into the work sometimes. I mean, it depends. What I mean by differences are differences of principle. Not just differences like you look different. That's not necessarily an issue. Obviously, you do want to look different. Otherwise, unless you're just marrying your own sister or your own clone. As somebody who, in our inner circle, we know as Sheikhul Qawm, a good friend of mine said to me once, he said, He said, my parents wanted me to have an arranged marriage when I was younger. He said, with my cousin from back home. He goes, don't get me wrong, she was absolutely stunning. He goes, she was absolutely stunning. She looked exactly like me, but just with long hair. So you don't even need to look into a mirror. You just look at her and you're just like, okay, great. Well, tell you one thing, we're going to confuse the hell out of the genes. The DNA is going to go like, whoa. The chromosomes are going to be like, whoa. Are we just going into a mirror here? Is that real? And anyway, so the point is, and then all the kids are going to definitely look identical. They're going to be like, those families where siblings have similarities anyway, but they're going to look bloody like spitting images. They're not even going to be similar. They're just going to be clones, like later versions. This is the 2002 model. This is the 2004 model. This is the 2000. So they're just going to be identical versions of. God damn. So anyway, so look at, I don't mean by looks being different, but values. So for example, two very strong-minded personalities will naturally struggle in a long-term relationship. That's just natural, because two very strong-minded people are going to have their own ways of looking at things. And it depends. I don't mean by strong-minded that they're not intelligent. Like, you can be intelligent but not necessarily so strong-minded. But two very strong-minded people will naturally clash on things. And so, when religion is another thing, because religion, I know people say, but religion doesn't bother me at this stage, but at some point it does, because the airy-fairy thing is all gonna, you're gonna come down from cloud 9 very... You're gonna come crashing down as soon as you get desensitized. So people are initially just so. It's like that stand-up comedian. He goes when he said he goes when you first get married, and he goes everything about her is so cute. He goes, you go into the kitchen, she's cooking, and she's got bloody broccoli coming off her face and stuck in her hair, and it's the cutest thing you've ever seen. He goes, and then a few years down the line, Anyway, right, so the point is, that phase is going to end, right? So I'm sorry to break it to you people, but it doesn't. So then religion might become an issue. So people might say, like, I don't want the children to be Muslim. I don't want them going to mosque. I don't want them learning about Islam. Islam is all about terrorism. What will happen then? See, this is why really Islam made this rule. It didn't make this ruling of religions, you can only marry Muslims, can marry Muslims, because it was discrimination. It didn't do it because of that. Because if it was that, then it wouldn't have allowed the Christian thing. It did it because it was trying to set an ideal society. And for an ideal society to flourish, it was trying to paint an ideal picture of the family unit that would flourish with some kind of stability. And it was just seeing ideals, that so the things that would work the best, it was setting them. And religion is, in most cases, an issue. Like when you disagree on, in some people, I'm not saying in every, but Islam was painting a picture for general people. It wasn't going by the anomalies. Most people will be bothered by religion at some point. Okay, so that's why, I don't know, but each to their own. Look, I can't really say. Right, so when are you coming to America? I don't think Trump would let me come. Right, a woman praying at her father's house after marriage, does she pray full or qasr if she's staying there only for 3 days? Right, the thing is, this is not more about her father's house. This is more about where on earth her father's house is. Is it a journey? That's the question. Okay, it's not about, oh, I'm in my dad's house. Hell yeah. Well, my daddy owns this house, so I don't even need to pray properly. So if it's in a, miles away, it's a journey, then yes, she can shorten the prayer. What you view that we're living in a computer simulation. Do I think we're living in a computer simulation? I don't think we are. Obviously, it's impossible to objectively prove that. But I guess for me, what counts is my perception. It doesn't have to be true. I could just be insane right now and dreaming all of this, and you guys could be nothing but a figment of my imagination. But I don't believe so, and I guess that's what counts for me. So I don't believe we are in a computer simulation, no. But Liverpool lost. Okay, I'm not into football. I totally, one of the, you can call it weird things about me is I totally can't see the fascination that people see in sports, in following sports. I honestly cannot see it. I just don't understand how people are obsessed about following sports. I don't see it. So I totally don't know anything about football or cricket or any of these things. I totally don't know. So I mean, a lot of my mates do, but totally a waste of time for me. Can I become your student? Hell yeah, inshallah. I've done some courses already that are out there, people. Some audio courses like on basic prayer. Like there's one called the Ashmawiyah, which is on Facebook. It's on, I think, YouTube as well. That's in 6 audio lectures. I've done one more developed called The Foundations of Islam, covering the 5 pillars of Islam by Qadi Iyad, the legendary Muslim Spanish scholar from 900 years ago. That's in 20 audio lectures. You can download that. And you can follow it. I've done a history on Muslim Spain in 13 audio lectures. You can download that, follow it. You can... I've done something on the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ in 10 lectures. That's available as well. And I will be doing more things, inshallah. You can follow them. Yeah, but awesome. There are many verses in the Quran which only apply to the Prophet and the particular community he was sent to. Following the theory of trajectory hermeneutics, how much of what's in the Quran still applies to our reality? You see, it's not that the Quran doesn't apply to us. The Quran applies to us, of course. Right, of course the Quran applies to us. But the Quran came with a particular message. Okay, the main message was the message of faith, that belief. And it came criticizing these irrational pagan Arabs that weren't prepared to reason. That is an entire, probably a third of the Quran, or at least a quarter of the Quran is all about that. Then you've got a huge part of the Quran is just stories of people in the past, which really just ties into the first part, that the reason that Allah is narrating those stories to show how other people before them were also sometimes just insisting on being dumb and refusing to follow reason. So that is a huge portion of the Quran. Then you've got certain verses that are all linked, a huge portion, all linking about the afterlife, saying that, look, people, prepare for an afterlife. Once again, message to do with faith. All of these things apply to us. All of these things are relevant. All of these things. Then there's some verses in the Quran. Some people say there's 500 verses approximately that deal with ahkam, with rulings. And many of these are to do with you should pray, you should do the Hajj, you should pay zakat, you should do this, you should do that. You shouldn't murder people, you shouldn't spread corruption in the earth. All of these are exactly as they are. Then there's some tiny verses, some verses that have descriptive points. They describe certain... So for example, Allah will say, let's say, don't drink alcohol. Now that still applies to us. There's nothing, don't eat pork, that still applies. The Quran is still there as it was. Then there's certain verses. So Allah is saying, for example, that we give sadaqat, we give charity. Charity here, sadaqat in that verse is talking about zakat, is given to these people. إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ and it goes on and it mentions, وَالْغَارِمِينَ and so on, and these people and those who are in debt and those who, Ibn Sabil and all these kind of people. Right, so the thing is, well, okay, how does, and Allah says, fi sabilillah, in the path of Allah, and these things, how would that be interpreted in our day and age? Okay, well, fuqara wal masakin, how is somebody poor today? So we would have to interpret poor by our standards. Because if you really go by the poor standard in the fiqh books, you see, because at that time people lived off, either they were hunter-gatherers, they still had some remnants of that hunting-gathering thing, but they were agricultural communities which stocked, like they worked things on an annual basis. So we would make wheat and they would stock it for a year. And a poor person was somebody who his wheat stock looked like he had only enough money right now, like as in wealth, that would last for 8 months and not a year. He was a poor person. Today we don't even work like that. We don't even, I mean, in this part of the world anyway, we don't. So we would have to reinterpret that in our light. Okay, so that's what it means. So there's certain verses speaking about things like, what is riba? Allah is condemning riba of the jahiliyyah. Now, what was the essence of riba that Allah was condemning? He was speaking about the exploitation at a particular level, that loan shark culture. And that still remains haram. The other elements don't really fit into loan shark. I mean, they might have some similarities, some distinctions. That can be re-evaluated in our age. But many things, obviously, you wouldn't evaluate, like, you wouldn't say now you can kill people. You wouldn't say things like, okay, punishments. When Allah spoke about punishment, these are a few verses in the entire Quran that talk about, Allah describing the punishments, the hudud. But the thing is, you would understand, well, okay, these were done in a certain time with Allah didn't introduce anything. He just spoke of what they were already doing. And just condoned which befitted their environment because they wouldn't tolerate anything else. This was set to change with each environment changing. Right, so those things would change and reflect our age. So obviously, those things, if they didn't reflect the age, the whole message would become compromised. So that's really the thing. Okay, so I hope that explains. Right. What is the ruling on constructing anything on top of a grave, which is very common? I think, in my understanding, just having a grave, like the ulama say, having a gravestone, a tombstone, is no problem. Doing up your grave, like let's say, depends what that means. If you mean by that, like just having, like you go to a graveyard, you see normal marble graves, whatever. If you want to do that as an act of preservation, okay, fair enough. I mean, Islam didn't really look at it too favorably, but I don't think it's such a big deal because people want to preserve certain things as reminders. But if you're talking about doing up a grave like the way you have darbars and these things done up, like massive mausoleums, and we're going to create you see, it depends. If it was something like you were creating a whole structure around it as like an educational tool, that's different, I think, in a way. Like let's say, for example, let's say Einstein. I'm just giving an example. So where Einstein's dead, so let's say where he was buried, let's say they didn't bury him in a graveyard, they bury him in a particular place, and in that place they have this whole building which is dedicated, like it's a mini museum of Einstein. So you could go there, you can see, a bit like Freud's museum, his house in London. Like you could go there, you could see his notebooks that he wrote from, you've got writing about who Einstein was, and it's introducing him, and it's teaching you about him, and let's say he happens to be buried there as well in one of the things. Something like this, I think, that's different. I think maybe there's space for stuff like that for very important, or people who are very significant figures. So imagine somebody really reshaped Islam in a particular time, and you did that for them. That's different. Normal Muslims, your average Muslim, I don't think they should. I don't agree with this kind of darbar culture of creating these big things and tombs and doing all this whole fanciful kind of thing around a grave. It's just that I find it folkloric. Okay, it turns the deen into something just about this weird kind of traditions, and it makes it a religion of folklore, which Islam isn't. And the Hadith did condemn it as well. Is it permissible for Sunni Muslims to marry a Shia? Oh, mut'a marriage. Right, well, I know most people wouldn't be able to turn down a mut'a with this. Go right. But you do think though how interesting that, right, so checkout time is checkout time is at noon. So I take it the contract, shall we say it ends at noon? Is that okay? So the thing is, you see, I do believe Sunni Shia can marry. I don't feel that they can't marry and whatever. But it comes back to that first question I answered about religion becoming an issue. If things will be an issue, then you should consider that. Just be a bit sensible. No, like obviously, like let's face it. Let's say a hardcore practicing Shia and a practicing hardcore Muslim, Sunni, mainstream Orthodox Muslim, he's got a better chance of that relationship working with a Christian. I'm just being honest, as a relationship, as a human interaction thing. If they were hardcore on it, because they're so opposed and there's a lot of abuse in the rhetoric, that it's going to stir sentiments. But if they weren't like that religiously, if they weren't hardcore kind of on it like that, and they weren't abusive, and they weren't... See, my thing isn't with the Shia, it's just about the abuse. I think abuse is wrong, that's all. So, I don't know, if you think you can work it, it's your call, your life, you're going to live it, not me. So, I mean, if you think you can work it, work it. I think it's permissible in Islam to marry anybody of any say. I feel it's permissible to marry a Shia. It's not haram or anything like that. I just think that you should just consider that is there going to be clashes, and that's all. Shaykh Akram Nadwi believes that Aisha was married at 9. He stated that. Into what do you have to say about that? Samir, I have to say what I've made a detailed video on it. That's what I have to say. I've made a very detailed response. So please do watch that. If you haven't watched that, do watch it. It's called The Age of Aisha. It is on YouTube. It's on Facebook. Like it, share it, get it out there. See, Shaykh Akram Nadwi is an amazing person who I just quoted earlier on, and I praised, and I do consider him from like the senior people within the UK. And I love and respect him and would love to resort to him. But it doesn't mean you have to become a clone. You know what I mean? And he wouldn't want me to be a clone of his. So the thing is, look, he would want me to have my own thoughts, to have my own understanding, to have my own... You know, it's like somebody said to me the other day, they said, Sheikh, can you tell me which commentary books on the Hadith it is that I can get? Like, I'm studying this book, which commentary can I get on it that has all these opinions that you're sharing? I said, yeah, thanks, mate. So you think all I do is really just read something and just reiterate? So thanks. That just means, right, so I thought, okay, don't give me no credit. You know, I've got, I do think as well. So anyway, the point is, let's go on. Can you do a talk at some point on great women at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and Sahaba? I'll tell you somebody who's done a great talk on that. Dr. Umar Abdullah has done a great talk on women in Islam. It's really good, actually. It's a series. You should listen to it. I recommend it. Somebody just on my thing saying hi to someone else. Yeah, all right. Some ulama use example to show Islam isn't always about logic. When you do wudu, you wipe over the leather socks. We wipe on top, not the bottom. Well, actually, that's wrong according to the Maliki Madhab, because you do wipe on top in the Maliki Madhab as well. Okay, so that's just one Madhab that says that. So the other Madhabs do not accept that. And by the way, that's a ritual. So when people say we don't reason, you don't reason rituals. Rituals are rituals by nature. They're not about reason. They're about a ritual. So having a ritual is not about reason. That we accept. It's an ibadah. So having an ibadah is just about worship. The worship you can understand, and the ritual is not meant to be an engineered tool. So, but the deen in general with its understanding is rational. Otherwise it would just be stupid. Otherwise you wouldn't know. Because look, if it's not rational, then what is it? Irrational. That's great. So we're just following something irrational. If someone is planning to go for Hajj, are they able to borrow part of the money from a family member? Yeah, if you want to, why not? I mean, if you feel... You know, I had somebody ask me the other day. They said to me, look, that they want to write something against people going to Hajj. And they said that because... And I said, well, okay, why is that? And they said, well, because Saudi Arabia perpetrates many atrocities, which they do, which I agree they do. And they said, so to boycott the Hajj to get them. I was like, hashtag delusions of grandeur. I was like, look, do you really think by you doing this that people are going to boycott Hajj? Like, seriously, you really believe that? And they said, well, no, but I think a few people will. I said, it makes no difference to them. Like, Saudi Arabia are blocking people from coming to Hajj. That's how many people they've got going on Hajj, or wanting to go on Hajj. How many people could you possibly convince? 10? 20? At best? And what have you done? What have you achieved? Like, you've just stopped 20 people from going to Mecca or Medina. Like, what? Like, what have you got? Like, Saudi ain't going to bloody change their human rights policies because 20 people didn't come to Hajj this year. So I said, look, why are you trying to deprive people by guilt-tripping them into these kind of things of a religious experience if they want to do it? I'm not somebody that prays a lot and does things a lot. I mean, obviously I don't mean the 5 prayers, but I don't pray nafil, and I wish I did, but I don't. I'm not somebody that can boast about ibadah. But if somebody is doing ibadah, why stop them? Like, I don't understand, like, what, like, why would I want to guilt trip them not to do it? That's just messed up. So I said, look, I don't understand what your point is. So they said, yeah, but this is supporting oppression. I said, but isn't it funny that we only take this? Like, why are you taking? You see, the thing is, I always say this. Like, we have to be consistent. We have to be consistent. That is the key, right? If you see, this thing where you are saying the government of Saudi Arabia is using money to perpetrate harm, which it is, but then are you applying that principle everywhere? Because it's not the UK government perpetrating harm. Is not the US government involved in drone strikes? Is not the US government one of the largest exporters of war throughout the globe? So when you're buying a product and you're paying taxes, are you contributing to that? Like, you are contributing to it unwillingly, but you are contributing to it because they're using your taxes as part of the budget. And so, they perpetrate the war in all these places, the propaganda that goes on, all this that's going on. Mainly it's the bloody US. I mean, I know other countries are involved as well. It doesn't mean that American people are necessarily bad, but their government has bloody got their head in almost everything. Let's face it. So does it mean when you are, buying something that when you're living, because this person lived in America, I said, look, by living in America, are you now, do you apply this there as well? Because why don't you leave? Why don't you go to Canada? At least they're peaceful. At least Trudeau's a legend. I mean, I rate Trudeau. So why don't you move to Canada? And the person said, well, I can't just get up and go. I said, well, see, now you can justify it. You got your reasons. So why let people do their Hajj? They've got their reasons. Like, my point is, consistency is key. Okay, consistency is key. So let's not... I'm all about human rights. I'm all about condemning things. But be consistent. Don't get hold of some naive Muslims and guilt trip them. Because it's not difficult guilt tripping people, but why do it? Because it's not fair on them. because those naive people have got no idea what, they just... Abortion in Islam. Ooh, hot topic. Abortion in Islam. Just drop it. Nah, that's that's the thing is, look, right, the point is that in my understanding, given reasons, abortion is permitted. There is no, I don't believe in, it's people, they have a right to choose, okay? I don't believe that like if a pregnancy was going to cause complications, whether that's biological, sociological, over emotional, life problems, then if they choose to abort, I feel that is the right of the parents. At the time, I feel that they can do that. Islam does give them that right to do that. It's not, they're not stuck with it. I don't agree with the Catholic Church, right? And, that hardcore view of, once it's conceived. And, no, I mean, what would make you think that I've got shares in the morning after pill? Right. I mean, why would you ask that question, that do I have shares in? No. So the thing is, no, but I believe that you have that time frame generally within Islam, which is 4 months. And if there were some reasons that you needed to abort, I feel that that's permissible. Okay? Why do we say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad? Why do we say it? I don't understand what that means. Why do we say it? Okay, we send blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ. Currently watching your live video. The issue has been bugging me. I watched this Peer justify his swearing. Allah swears in the Quran, verse 13. Is that correct? Swearing. God damn you people. It depends what that means, you see. Because swearing, what does that mean? I think personally Muslims are a bit too oversensitive on swearing. I don't get the point really, because what is swearing except words? I mean, it's profanity, use of profanity. You see, in my understanding, swearing, it depends. One is swearing at someone to harm them. That is haram. So if I say to somebody, you effing so and so and so and so, right, to your mother is a this, to rile them up, that is haram, because causing harm is haram. Swearing in general isn't actually haram in my understanding. It's not haram. Obviously, people don't like doing it within certain contexts, which are formal contexts, or certain, they believe it, you appear uncivil, you appear whatever, but I don't believe it's haram to swear. General, like if I said F that, what's the big, why would that be haram? So people, and in my understanding that the companions, or in the Prophet's time, so people say, did they used to swear? You see, the thing is, they did, of course they did, but in their own context. So the swearing that, you see, swears, you have to understand what swearing is all about. Swearing is all about taboos. Okay, so in a given age, you have a certain taboo. Now, in swearing, you violate the taboo. That's what swearing is about. Now, in the Prophet's time, sex was not a taboo. So with the Arabs, sex at that time was very, very casual. In fact, it was such a casual topic that Muslims today would find it immodest. They would find the way the companions and the Prophet treated the topic of sex as immodest today. I'm being honest, they actually would. You wouldn't, Muslims today would never ever, like, because we've obviously over time, especially post-Victorian era, the world seems to have taken on this whole, sex has become a taboo. So prior to that, it wasn't as much of a taboo. So in the Prophet's time, so for example, they would speak so casually about sex that, see, like, even for me to explain it to you is like almost uncomfortable. So they would speak like, so I give an example which I've given several times, that in a hadith the Prophet goes, they're going past, they knock for a companion and he doesn't open the door, so then they walk off, and then the companion comes wrapping his izar, he kind of comes out, and he says, oh, did you come knock for me? And the Prophet says, oh yeah, were you busy? He says, yeah, I was just having sex, that's all. And the Prophet says, oh, did you finish? And he says, no, I didn't finish really, I didn't ejaculate or orgasm or whatever. And the Prophet says, oh, well, in that case, you see, now today we wouldn't be able to talk like this. Our societies are not that open about sex, like it's still a taboo for us. Even in these liberal societies, it's still a taboo. Amongst friends it might be a bit more casual, but with normal people you don't talk like that. So in another hadith, so for example, when the Prophet's talking, he would say oh no, I was just having sex, and when I have sex, this is how the Prophet they would speak in certain hadith. Now that for us is too taboo, but for them it was just very normal. Sex was, it wasn't even a, so they wouldn't swear sexually because sex wasn't a taboo. But what was a taboo is, and in fact, if you don't believe, you should read the kind of, I tell you, you should read up one of the nikahs that becomes haram, right, in Islam. It doesn't become haram because of this, but it becomes haram for another associating factor, which is called nikah al-shighar, right? And those of you, it's in all of the fiqh books, all of the books of fiqh have got this. And nikah al-shighar, they say is haram, but it would be like a swap, not a swap, sorry, like a, which they did used to before Islam came, used to swap women as well. But the point was they had a shighar, which was like you marry his daughter, he marries your daughter, you marry his sister, he marries your sister, like you do a direct kind of like an intermarry swap like that. But the whole point of it was not only do you do it, but as soon as you've done it, you would go home and you would consummate the marriage, both of you, and the reason they call it shighar, in a particular sexual style which resembled the dog when it urinates, like you had to lift up a leg, and that is how you both would go and consummate the marriage. And that's why they called it shighar. And this was, it goes right to the extent that the reason the ulama said it was forbidden wasn't because of anything to do with this, was just because of it being the swap, it could cause complications with divorce. So if one thing goes wrong with one relationship, it could cause the other one. So they weren't too sure about because a marriage should just be a couple, but this was twinned with another couple, so it could cause, as a lot of Pakistanis, that we call it, what is it, Davati, or I think they call it Davati, or they call it I know they call it Adli Badli as well. Adli Badli. I think that's in Pashto, they call it more Adli Badli. And but the thing is, anyway, so they do this swap. So even though the Hanafi ulama still allowed it, but the other ulama said that, nah, we don't want complications. But the point was, this is how explicit they were. So there was no point them swearing using sexual language, because it wasn't a taboo. But what was a taboo for them was things like diseases and destruction and eternal damnation, and these things were a taboo for them. So this is how their swears were. So they used to say things like, may you have eternal damnation, may you get diseased, may your mother become bereft of you, may your children become orphan, may you have such and such disease that makes you lose all your hair, may you have, and this was their swearing, and that is full in the Islamic literature. Like, so they swear all the time like that. Thaqilatki ummuk, may your mother become bereft of you. They used to use that all the time, just as casual speech. Just as today, a lot of people in the Indo-Pak world use the ban, that swear, right? I won't finish the whole swear, but they use that as a, just they just use it as a word, like whenever they're saying something as an expression. They don't mean the swear anymore, but they just use it as an expression. As I suppose in English, how we use the F word. It's just used as a casual, it's used for everything. In fact, it's one of the most versatile words in the English language. But, so is this haram? I don't believe that's haram. Obviously, doing it to harm people is haram, but just casually swearing is not necessarily. It might be seen as uncivil, and it might be unbefitting of certain settings. So, for example, if you went to school, now you would have rules. Now, human beings, we have rules. So, in certain settings, you wouldn't use certain language. Like you wouldn't, for example, it's not that it's haram. Like, so for example, you wouldn't go home and call your dad by his name. I mean, I know in some cultures they do, but in our culture, that would be like, you'd be like on a video getting executed. You'd be like reading a script like, to all children out there, please do not, as growing up as a Pakistani or as a Muslim, please do not call your parents by your name. If you do, you too shall meet this fate. Or it'd be a chappal. It'd be executed by a repeated chappal to the head. Until eventually you've got severe concussion and you just bleed out internally. So the thing is, but it's not haram in Islam to call your dad by his name or your mum by his name. In fact, in the Sahaba's time, they used to do it all the time. Aisha in several hadith calls her father Abu Bakr. She says, Abu Bakr, why don't you do this? But in our culture, that's not permitted. So there's certain things that they have a context to them. So swearing, obviously, it's different if you're with your friends or you're casual. It's not haram, but there's a context that you wouldn't do it in, as far as society is concerned, in certain contexts. Like, you go into school, you're not going to swear. You're in at work context, you're not going to swear. Or you might appear hostile in a context, so you're not going to swear. These things are called common sense, is civility. Okay, being a human being, so you know when to do these things. It's a bit like saying you're not gonna break wind or pass wind. Some people do, but you're not gonna do it like with people in certain contexts. You're not gonna do that. It's not haram to do it, but you're not gonna do it. You know better. So there's a difference, okay? But in itself, it's not haram. So, and some people, you know, they do use profane language between themselves when they're chilled out. Other people don't. You shouldn't go all religious on them. Don't go all Taliban on them, right? So, they're like, oh, the wrath of God is going to come down on you. You're committing haram. Oh my God, these people swear. I got a right swear for them. But I would just say, look, just chill up, people. Stop imposing religion on people, man. And that to a twisted version of it. So anyway, did the flood during the time of Noah cover the entire world? Okay, guys, I think we're gonna wrap up with this question, right? No, Noah alayhi salam's flood was not for the world. Will people stop spreading bloody biblical Christian propaganda under the banner of Islam? Right? That is so dumb, right? That Noah, Christians believe that Noah alayhi salam's flood flooded the entire world, and Noah alayhi salam somehow took on all the creatures, which then when they landed inhabited the earth. I don't think so. So where on earth did kangaroos come from? Were they on his boat? Did he, I mean, what the hell? So because Noah alayhi salam, how old could Noah alayhi salam be? So how do these animals have genes that go way before, and they've got nothing to do with those? This is just ridiculous, okay? So Noah alayhi salam, his flood was a very local, regional flood. He was working on his people. He was not working on the globe, right? That doesn't even make any sense. Because if Noah alayhi salam had been sent for the whole world, then was he even warning the whole world? And did he expect the whole world to climb on his boat? I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. So those bechare just got flooded for no reason with no warning. So this is Christian. People, wrong religion, right? Islam, not Christianity. Islam, not Genesis, Quran, okay? So you've got some renowned scholars on YouTube going, this is no fairy tale, that we are really all the children of Noah alayhi salam. Christianity, Islam. Christianity, Islam. We are not the children of Noah alayhi salam, everybody on the earth, okay? I'm sure many people may be, but we are not all the children of Noah alayhi salam. Stop spreading this false information under the banner of Islam. Okay, we are all the children of Adam. He goes, like, these are renowned scholars. They say, yes, we're the children of Adam, but really we're the children of Noah because all of humanity got wiped out except whoever was on the boat with Noah, which was hardly anybody, right? So the point is, this is not, Islam never said that. Stop following Christian doctrine, okay? So this embarrasses Islam once again. And seriously, so this kind of stuff, anyway, it's a good question. I'm glad somebody asked it, because I was just coming across this last week actually, and this renowned scholar telling people that, and I respect the scholar dearly, but the point is, this is nonsense. Saying this is no fairy tale, you should, this is and then telling things like Adam alayhi salam was, like in that hadith. That hadith is not sahih. It is chain, it has a correct valid chain, but it is not authentic as far as we're concerned, okay? Ibn Fawraq puts that in his Mushkil al-Hadith, that hadith that Adam alayhi salam was 60 cubits long, and this and that, and then humanity has started to decrease. No, it hasn't, okay? No, it has not. Okay, we have findings, we have bone records, we have DNA, we have, right, okay, so, right, if you want to go far back as Homo sapiens, if you want to go 100 to 200,000 years, if you want to go to Homo erectus up to 2 million years back, Homo augusta, if you want to go prior to that, even Australopithecus, if you want Homo africanus, if you want to go to, human beings, yes, they vary in height, but it will be anything from 5 foot to maximum, maybe some people really big reached up to 7 foot. But this in between, probably on average, people were anything between. They were not like people used to be, something like, people used to be 150 feet tall, and then they just became small. That's not how it worked. And in Saudi Arabia, they made this big thobe, right, like a big thobe for Adam alayhi salam. You can find it on, I think, online. I mean, why on earth would Adam alayhi salam want to wear a bloody Saudi thobe? Right, I got no idea. But but the thing is, anyway, right, they made this massive thobe in line with that measurement, trying to say this is how big Adam alayhi salam was. Right, so please people, Adam alayhi salam, father of humanity, father of us humans, like modern humans, right? He was not, we believe he would have generally been like humans today. Okay, so that's the whole purpose. Okay, because we are his offspring. Right, people, let's wrap this up. Sorry about this. If there's any interesting quick questions. Right, is it true that you think only 10% of Muslims pray? I don't even think 10% of Muslims pray. But I didn't say that to disparage Muslims. Okay. I didn't say that to belittle them. I was just saying this as an observation, saying that, look, if you take 100% of the Muslims worldwide, whatever, 2 billion or whatever they are, right, realistically speaking, if you're talking about 5 times praying a day religiously, every day, tiny fraction of people actually do that. Tiny fraction. So if you met 10 people, 1 out of 10 wouldn't even do that. Maybe 1 out of 20, if you're lucky. I would think. I lived in Pakistan for several years. I lived in a mega city, Karachi, one of the largest cities in the world. At that time, it had 15 million people in it. Today, it's probably got anything about 16 million probably people living in it. You see, we would even at times, I was saying that we would do sometimes some informal research where we would actually, my friends and I, we would sometimes ask casual, like laborers and people like that, we'd ask them some questions on Islam. Like, we'd ask sometimes, like, have you heard of Isa alayhi salam or Musa alayhi salam? Who were they? Like, sometimes you see, because the name Musa is a name, Like, so people have heard of the name Musa. It's like saying in English, have you heard of David? Now, they've heard of a name David, but do they know David and Solomon as that David? So most people we asked did not even know who Isa alayhi salam was, didn't even know who Musa alayhi salam was. We asked some people, they just about, seriously, I don't mean to be shocking, they just about knew the name Muhammad. Like many Muslims, they definitely did not pray. I'm not saying this to disparage them, but they were just busy surviving. They just work. They said they were Muslim. Obviously, they loved Islam. They believed in Allah. They believed in the Quran. They said that the Quran is a book from Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger. Most people didn't know the Prophet ﷺ, but beyond that, they knew very little. They knew that there's going to be a heaven, hell, stuff like this, but they didn't know. They don't pray 5 times a day. You're joking. Most people praying 5 times. Have you lived in a Muslim, like, that's a mega city. It's not that's, you wish that 10% of that city is actually praying when you go around and you're seeing people. No way. I would think if you're lucky, maybe 5%, but 5 times, and I mean religiously, and I'm not saying this to pick up, but you could choose something else. So for example, if we chose Ramadan, then I believe majority of Muslims fast. So I would feel probably anything between 80% to maybe 90% between that of Muslims would fast in Ramadan. So you see, so on some things we hold on to religiously. And I would feel many Muslims, I don't know the percentage, but many Muslims once in their life probably go to do Hajj. I don't think most Muslims pay zakat, but I think on Ramadan they do hold on to it the most adhered thing to is probably Ramadan. And they obviously pray Jummah. Many people pray Jummah, definitely pray Eid. And they care about things like nikah, talaq, janaza, but they don't pray, like most people don't pray. But once again, that's not being belittling. I'm surprised that people actually question that's like, to me, like just common sense. You just walk around a Muslim area, think, if you stopped every 10 people, you think one of them actually prays 10 times, like full 5 times a day. I mean, obviously, if you're in a very religious community, then maybe, but generally, just come to Birmingham, people. Just walk through Alum Rock, right? Right. Alright, so what do you think about fortune cookies? Right, beware of these kind of superstitions, people. Can one who does all your courses online call himself your student? Can somebody who does my courses on site? Hell yeah, you can be my student, man. I want you to be my student, inshallah. Student, a friend. Follow me on Facebook, add me, inshallah, on Twitter, whatever, Snapchat, Malm2014, shoot me your questions. Just use your family and you'll get the same statistics. Yeah, if I use my family, I'll get the same statistics. I mean, some people are in religious families, so it's different. It's difficult because all their family prays and all their friends pray, so they think everybody prays. Most Muslims. There's a very interesting article, people, I read the other day on Facebook about how is some research done over, like, ethnographic research by some guy. It was by Vice. It was shared by Vice about how young British Pakistanis males reconcile drug dealing with being Islamic, as in how they reconcile drug dealing whilst being Muslim. Put it like that, whilst being Muslim. It was really interesting to see this person for 3-4 years. He went around and he saw that Muslims didn't manage to, like, they didn't see a clash between, like, they even when they became inclined to religion to them just meant forcing your sisters to wear hijab. It didn't mean stop drug dealing, which is ridiculous. It is crazy. Drugs plague the Muslim communities, and I think it's much worse now. You know, many years back it was just, I think, weed and stuff like that, but now I think, like, people plagued with, you know, people on heroin, people on crack, people on things like this. It destroys lives, this does. So, you know, may Allah make things easy for each and all people. Right, let's inshallah leave you to it. Right, so inshallah, guys, if you've got any questions, feel free to shoot them to me, inshallah. If you did if today was of some benefit, inshallah, you can remember me in your kind words, kind du'as. You can like this, you can share it, you can say nice comments, not just the trolls. If you haven't watched my York video, do watch it, because I answer some of the most difficult questions that were fired at me at once. I didn't expect them to come at once, but they did. So anyway, people, right, I'm going to leave you to it, inshallah. Till next week, inshallah. Take good care of yourselves, folks, right? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.